Today, we're going to have a couple of speakers, but right now I want to call up a former congressman who always supported us, our first responders, supported law enforcement, former Congressman Lee Zeldin.
Staten Island, do we love our men and women in blue? Yo, this room is filled up with New Yorkers who want safe streets. We want to make sure that our men and women in law enforcement are given all the tools and resources they need to be able to do their job safely and effectively. We want streets that have law-abiding New Yorkers in charge of them as opposed to the criminals. We want the people who are elected to represent us to be making sure that we're rolling back pro-criminal laws, that we have district attorneys who are actually doing their jobs. But unfortunately, in a state like ours here in New York, that's not the direction we're heading. In New York State right now, when they pass cashless bail and raise the age and less is more, and the HALT Act and the discovery law changes, when you have DAs who believe that that stands for defense attorney, not district attorney, you have men and women leaving the force because elected officials don't have their backs. People are leaving for states like Florida. New York is leading the entire country in out-migration right now. The people who are in charge of us don't understand why it is that people are fleeing New York. And the reality is that when they look at states like Florida, they know that their money will go further, they will feel safer, and as we saw during COVID, they will live life freer. So they're gone. Right now, the state of Florida has an exceptional governor who has spent years now taking this state in the right direction. Florida was at a crossroads in 2018. Florida could have went in two very different directions depending on that gubernatorial race that year. I had an opportunity to serve with Ron DeSantis in the House of Representatives. He was a conservative fighter. He was principled, articulate. He was on as a workhorse all day, every day, to fight for his constituents, his state, and this country. He's a Navy man. He is someone who has served from here at home to Gitmo to Iraq. He's a family man. And as we know in his heart, he is someone who is committed to make sure that people who live in his state have a fighter representing them, to make sure that pro-criminal laws will not get passed in their state capital, to make sure that prosecutors are doing their jobs, and if they don't do their job, they will be removed. And if you are a law enforcement officer in a state like New York, and you see elected officials and others tying your hands behind your backs, putting the handcuffs on the criminal justice system instead of putting the handcuffs on the bad guys, well, Governor DeSantis will give you a bonus on top of it all if you make that decision to move down to Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our honor here as New Yorkers on Staten Island, where it has been too long since we've been able to hear a voice of a governor who is unapologetically fighting for us and our families to keep us safe, prosperous, and free. But the people of Florida, they know him, and all of America knows him as the greatest governor that we have right now in the United States of America. Give it up for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Thank you. Well, good morning. Now, is not, obviously I just came up from Florida. Is this Florida North or is Florida Staten Island South? How many of you are Florida residents? Do we have any? We have a couple. How many of you have immediate family who are Florida residents? How many of you maybe have like property in Florida? Yeah. How many of you someday may end up being a Florida resident? All right. Look, you don't have to look far in Florida to find someone that's got Staten Island roots. But I'm great. I'm happy to be here. I want to thank Lee Zeldin for the great introduction. I want to thank the FOP, all the law enforcement organizations that are hosting us here today, because I think our message is very important. People have looked and looked at Florida as been kind of the place to be over the last several years in our country. And I can rattle off all the statistics. We are the fastest growing state in the United States. Florida has led the country for many years now in net in-migration. I think New York has led in net out-migration. We are the #1 state for economic freedom, #1 state for new business formations, #1 state for tourism, #1 state for education freedom, #1 state for parental involvement in education, #1 in GDP growth amongst the big states since I've been governor. We have one of the lowest per capita tax burdens in the country, one of the lowest per capita debt burdens in the country, and we now have a record budget surplus. And so people see that. They see that our unemployment rate's 2.5%. That's over a percentage point lower than the nation as a whole. For the first time in the history of the United States, Florida has more people employed than the state of New York does. And, you know, we've got a lot of retired people of our 22 million. So that's saying that we're doing things right. And people look at that and they say, well, you know, yeah, businesses were open during COVID, the lower taxes, all that stuff. You know, there's all these different reasons. And all those are important. Don't get me wrong. But I just want to tell you the foundation of Florida's success has been a commitment to law and order and support for the men and women who wear the uniform. As you see crime that has spiraled out of control in all these areas around our country over the last few years, Florida right now has a crime rate that's at a 50-year low. Now the question is, why do we have a 50-year low? Why is crime a big issue in New York or Chicago or all these other places? And I wish I could tell you that like Floridians are just so much better, but it's not the reason. It's not. The reason is we support strong policies to keep our communities safe, and we back the blue and we support their mission, and we back it up with money and all kinds of stuff to be able to do it. The reason why you have what you have in some of these other jurisdictions is because they're putting woke ideology ahead of your safety as New Yorkers or as people from Illinois or wherever you have this type of policy taking place. So what have we done in Florida? When they were talking about defunding police and slashing budgets, we said, not on my watch, that's not happening. But we also understood, I've got a state of 22 million people, I got 67 counties, I got all these municipalities. You know, you could have 3 bozos on some city commission do something stupid like that. And, you know, that's not necessarily something that we at that time had control over. So what we did is we passed legislation preventing any local government in Florida from defunding the police. They can try, but we'll put the money back in. We also saw, summer of 2020, the worst riots in public disorder that this country has seen in decades. And it was really aided and abetted by woke ideologues and these feckless politicians. And so we didn't allow that to happen in the state of Florida. As soon as I saw this start happening in other states, we mobilized the National Guard, we dispatched all our state law enforcement agencies, but we worked hand in hand with police officers in Miami and all these other places, and we said, you are not going to burn down the state of Florida. And so they didn't burn down the state of Florida. So we were able to say, not going to happen. But then we also understood you've got to make sure these police officers are protected, the public's protected, because what would happen, I mean, you saw it here, the police are out there, and then these people will just take pot shots at them. They'll throw things, bottles, all this other stuff, and you're just like a sitting duck. So we did anti-riot legislation in Florida, which says if you're engaged in mob violence, if you're engaged in rioting or looting, you're not getting a slap on the wrist. You're going to jail in the state of Florida, and you're going to pay the price. And if you do that and you assault a police officer or target a police officer, you're going to have enhanced penalties for that, because we're going to back the people that are backing us. We've also rejected policies like eliminating cash bail and releasing criminals early who haven't even served their full sentences. Those policies we knew would fail, but now we've seen for sure that they have failed. So as all this is going on in these other jurisdictions, as they're slashing police budgets, as they're defunding police, we in the state of Florida did for 2 years in a row, the last 2 years, we did for every municipal, every county, every state law enforcement officer, we did $1,000 bonuses 2 years in a row to show that not only are we not going to defund you, we're going to support you. And that was unique in the country. And it's $1,000 in take-home pay, too. So we actually do like $1,300, so we pay for the taxes, so you don't have to worry about that. Do police here in Staten, you guys have to pay city income tax too for police? Yes? Yeah. No, we don't want the add to the tax burden. So we did that. And as Lee mentioned, we saw an opportunity because morale had never been lower amongst people wearing the uniform. And yes, New York, you guys know, but like Seattle, all these other places, you had people that were quitting, you had people that were retiring early. So we in Florida saw an opportunity to say, wait a minute, these are some of the best trained police officers in the country. We have a growing state, we've got availability, and we want to recruit the best. And so we created a program that if you come from out of state in one of these agencies and you go any agency in Florida, city, county, state, you get a $5,000 signing bonus right off the top to show that we value your service and that your service is going to be meaningful for our communities. But we also do other benefits. So in Florida, we have a lot of school choice. So K through 12, all low-income families can get a scholarship and they can go to the school of their choice. We've moved it up more and more middle-income families. We're probably going to expand that in this next legislative session. But there has been an income limitation. Well, for police officers in Florida, if you are active duty police or law enforcement, it doesn't matter what your household income is. There's no cap. You get to go and get these scholarships, and you can send your kid to the school of their choice. And so that's been huge for so many law enforcement. So we're doing it right in Florida, and my message is if you're disenchanted, if you don't think things are going to turn around, wherever you are, not just in New York, wherever, just know that there's a state that's doing it right. There's a state that will value your service, and more importantly than just someone like me going out there and doing it, because, yeah, look, it is helpful. When you have governors or these councilmen or something that are lampooning the police, that's not good. But I would tell you in Florida, it's more than just that. It's the elected leadership is really showing what the communities themselves feel. And so you go to communities all across the state of Florida, they value the people that wear the uniform. And that's just authentic, and that's just something that makes a difference. So we're open, and that's the thing. I got all these people flocking to Florida. I mean, people are moving businesses. Like, I don't recruit businesses. Businesses call me and say, hey, I'm coming to Florida. Can I just say hi or something like that? They're just coming. People are moving, which is great. The one group that I do recruit, though, are the law enforcement. And so that offer stands. We're going to continue our program going forward in the next legislative session. So you can just take that to the bank. But we also have to send another message. We have seen woke policies be put into place in some of these very woke jurisdictions. And the frustrating thing is you'll have these people running for like district attorney or this stuff, and they're in the Democrat primary, and they're all running to be left of the left, but then whoever wins the primary wins the general because you have such an imbalance. So it creates this race to try to outwoke one another, and that ends up creating these disastrous policies. And so what have we seen? You guys know better than me, but I've seen it all across the country. What you started to see, particularly in 2020, but really even before then, were just political attacks on the people that wear the uniform. It's like you go in, you risk your life, you do something, and then you have to worry about all these feckless politicians out showboating to try to run you down. Nobody wants to have to put their life at risk and then have to face that nonsense. And that's really where the defund the police movement came out of. They were looking to harness anti-police sentiment to try to do things like cut the force and have social workers in charge of all that. Yeah, good luck responding to some of these crimes with a social worker. So you have to have strong respect and strong support for the people that wear the uniform. You know, one of the things I'm proud about in Florida is if you look, other than the tri-state area, we have the highest number of people who served on 9/11. NYPD, FDNY, Port Authority, you know, they come to Florida. So we do 9/11 things every year. I got all these guys there, you know, that had been. And everyone in America appreciated what they did that day. Well, they do things like that all the time. It just may not be as newsworthy, may not be as famous of a situation, but they're still risking their lives just the same. And I also think in this country, because we just saw what happened to this police officer in Philadelphia, you know, if these criminals target and they assassinate a police officer, they should get the death penalty for doing that. So let's get communities all across this country to recognize the vital role that the people that wear the uniform play. Let's put this defund the police movement on the ash heap of history. And that's really the first step in correcting what's gone wrong. The other thing, and Lee mentioned, you've got terrible legislation that has been passed in different parts of this country. This idea of no cash bail and you just release them right back onto the street. And I read that New York is the only state that doesn't allow judges to consider when they're making a bail determination whether someone's a danger to the community. That's like one of the most important things that you need to be considering when you're making these bail determinations. So here you are in uniform, having to risk your life to go in these situations. You apprehend a criminal, bring them in, and then they just release them. So you got to risk your life again 2 weeks later to arrest the same guy all over again. How does that make any sense? Is that making your community any safer to be doing that? Of course not. So you need to do things like repeal these failed pieces of legislation. One of the things I was really excited about when Lee was running and I got to come up, we were in Long Island one night with him, a huge crowd and everything. Honestly, like if you didn't have so many Republicans move to Florida, they would have all voted for. I mean, it's tough. Well, they used to say, you know, I would meet New Yorkers, not just New Yorkers. I'd meet New Yorkers, some people from Chicago, whatever, and they'd tell me, they'd be like, you know, oh, Governor, I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad to be in a state where my vote counts. Because, you know, at the time, for really a decade until I became governor, Florida was like a 1% state. So yeah, you know, your vote really counted. Now I'm thinking to myself, okay, I won by 1.5 million votes. We could have spared some of those votes for Lee. I'm just saying, I mean, I'm happy to have the support, but we're sitting pretty good. But one of the things he did, and I think he was one of the only candidates willing to say, I was the only governor that's ever done anything about it, is to identify these prosecutors who get elected, and then they take the law into their own hands. They don't respect the laws on the books that you, through your elected representatives, have passed. No, they think they should be able to pick and choose which laws are going to be enforced and which laws will not be enforced. So you have a fellow in Manhattan who has taken that. It's made the area so much more dangerous, bleeds out into other places. And Lee Zeldin, on day one, was going to fire him from his position. So So you've seen it not just here, you've seen it all over the country, San Francisco, Los Angeles. They get in and they say, we are going to reform criminal justice by nullifying laws that we don't like. Well, the results in San Francisco have been disastrous, in Los Angeles. When I have people moving from Los Angeles to Florida because of safety, I mean, it used to be people would move to California. They never left. Now, in the last 4 or 5 years, they now leave California and they suffer net out migration. And that's one of the major reasons why. And it's public safety is a huge part of this because it is making the communities more dangerous. But it's also about, are we a constitutional system based on the rule of law? Or is it just the rule of one woke prosecutor that happens to get elected with George Soros' campaign contributions? I want the rule of law. I don't want the rule of an individual man who thinks he's above the law. And so in Florida, we made that very clear that we were not going to tolerate prosecutors putting themselves above the law. Well, I had a fella in Tampa who said there were certain laws that he was going to refuse to enforce that the legislature of the state of Florida had duly enacted. And so I removed him from his post. So I think having these prosecutors that are pursuing a woke agenda is something that's been hugely detrimental to the safety and security of the people throughout all these different communities. And it should be the goal of every community. You find any one of these woke prosecutors, make it your job. If you can recall them, recall them. If you can't, you got to vote them out of office at the nearest opportunity. Another thing that we've done in Florida, which usually doesn't get tied in with law enforcement, but I think there is a connection, is we really work hard to make sure that we have a K through 12 school system that parents can have confidence in, that you know as a parent you send your kid to school in Florida and that child will get an education, not a political indoctrination. And so we fought, you may have heard, we got in a little tangle, a little tussle with a company in Florida that some people may have heard about, runs some theme parks, about whether it's appropriate to be injecting matters of sexuality and gender theory into these elementary schools. I mean, this is not appropriate to ever tell a student that they were born in the wrong body or any of that. But I mean, they were really fighting hard to get this in. Parents didn't want it. We stood up. We won that fight. And as a result, Disney used to, for 60 years, actually control its own government in the state of Florida. Those days are now over. But you see they want to get things like gender ideology. We have stuff with critical theory where they basically will take a kid, comes in 6 years old, and they'll say, okay, you're white, you're an oppressor, or you're to blame for something that happened 200 years ago just because you share the same color as someone that may have done something. And so we fought critical theory across the board, and you hear sometimes about that. What some people don't know, some of this critical theory, they actually are teaching kids to demonize and to hate law enforcement. They will teach these kids that law enforcement are looking to mow down innocent people, and they're creating, I think, a hatred for people that wear the uniform that is simply unacceptable. So not only in Florida do we not do the critical theory, what we've done is we've established programs where the school districts can have students go and work with law enforcement and be able to see what's going on firsthand. What do they see? They don't see anything that should be demonized. What they end up seeing are people that are working hard, patriotic, law-abiding people that are trying to keep the community safe. It develops in our school children an appreciation for the people that wear the uniform. And that's an important thing. We cannot be raising our kids to test the people that risk their lives to keep us safe. And in Florida, that does not happen. So I know I will see some of you in Florida at some point. in the near or sometime in the future, and we welcome. I will say, though, I mean, there's certain parts of Florida that are very, very crowded this time of year. Good luck getting a dinner reservation in Naples in February or in some of these places in Southeast Florida. But we welcome everyone that wants to come to serve in law enforcement. But I think even more important, because like as much as I'm proud that Florida is doing well, I want the country to do well. I want all of these communities to do well. And in order to do that, we've got to get a commitment for law and order throughout every corner of this country. In Florida, we say we fight the woke in the schools, we fight the woke in the legislature, and yes, we fight the woke when they go after our law enforcement. We do not surrender to the woke mob. Our state is where woke goes to die. Thank you all. God bless. Thanks. Appreciate it.